Good morning, and welcome to day 5 of 365 Days of Stories with Theo Mayer. Sometimes things just don't go the way you'd like them to, and it can get to the point where you don't even want to go deal with them because you don't know what's going to happen next. It's almost like a fear takes over you. And rather than go confront what you need to, you want to just curl up and hide away from it all. Well, this story is a story about Samba the coward. Once, in a land close to the beginning of the Great Nile River, there lived a king who had an only son. His name was Samba. And even as a young child, he was afraid of loud noises, unknown things that he would see, situations, and he would run from them and hide away so that he wouldn't have to deal with things that frightened him. The king didn't pay it much mind in the beginning, but as he grew older and continued this behavior, even some of the king's closest friends would say, it is very odd that a child of our race would be afraid of the trumpeting of an elephant or the roaring of a lion, the clap of thunder. This is odd. The king would roll his eyes and respond, yes, it is, but I'm sure when he grows up to be a man, this will all change. Well, Samba did grow up to be a very strong, tall, and handsome man. But it was noted that on any of the hunting expeditions that the king would have, Samba would never be in a spot that would be considered at all dangerous. And so the talk about Samba's courage continued as he continued to grow older and become more and more in line to inherit the ruling of the kingdom. The comments were, well, certainly when the king has the great celebration and appoints Samba heir to the throne, he will become a man then. And everyone wished so much that they could agree. The celebration came, and loud were the cheers for Samba as he was anointed to be heir to the throne. But his ways did not change. It was not very long after that. Then a tribe of bandits came to the city. And while the people were soundly sleeping, gathered up a great herd of cattle and pushed them away in an attempt to steal them. In the morning, when this was noted, the king rang the war bell, and all of the warriors gathered in the square. The people called for Samba, but he was nowhere to be found. The avengers had to go off without him, and so they did, and brought the cattle back. And it was only 2 or 3 days later that Samba returned, with a tale of having tracked a lion into its lair and having killed it with his bare hands. There was a time where the people would have loved to have heard and believed a story like this. But that time had passed. as Samba was surrounded by the people of the kingdom there when he had ridden back, a young boy called out, "Samba the coward!" Others joined in, and it was a name that Samba could not rid himself of. Even his father did not spare him. Well, the humiliation that Samba felt was unbearable, but more unbearable was the thought that at some point in time he would be expected to lead the army in some one of the wars that were always taking place. Samba made up his mind. He had heard of a city to the north, further down along the river of the Great Nile, where peace had reigned for as long as anyone could remember. Samba decided that he would go there. And one night, he went into the stables and picked one of the most beautiful, black, quiet horses that he could, led it out of the stables, mounted it, and started on his way north. Samba would always remember the fright that he experienced on traveling. By night, he could barely sleep. He was so afraid of what wild beast might be lurking behind a rock or a bush. And during the daytime, the trumpeting of an elephant, the roar of a lion, would almost have him falling off his horse in fright. He thought about turning back, but did not. Not because of the fear he felt of being in the wilds, but because he could not face the thought of being in a war. And so he continued. And eventually, his heart grew happy as he saw a city whose size he had never imagined. He sat up taller in his saddle as he rode toward the gates. And as he went through the gates, he sat up as tall as he could and began to wend his way dexterously with his horse through the crowds of people. Now, as chance would have it, the princess, whose habit it was to sit upon the terrace of her dwelling that overlooked the streets and the square, saw Samba as he entered in through the gate. "Who is that valiant figure?" she asked. Turning to one of her maidservants, she said, "Go find out who that is." When she returned, she said, "Oh, my princess, that is a prince from a kingdom far to the south, and he is heir to it." Said the princess. "Call my father. I will tell him that if I cannot marry that man, I will not marry at all." Well, the princess's father was called, and they had a short discussion about this new stranger who had come into the town. Of course, Samba was sought out and invited to the king's palace. Now, the king had been trying for quite some time to find a suitable suitor for his daughter, but she would have none of them. And so the thought that she might be interested in actually marrying this new prince who had come in through the gate gave him great delight. And after having a conversation with Samba, who he found to be so pleasant and well-mannered and, well, just a delight to meet and talk to, he agreed to the marriage. And 3 days later, it was held with great pomp and celebration. The queen, or the princess, was proud of her new, handsome, tall, strong husband, and did not tire of hearing his stories and hearing about the land that he had come from, where the manners were so different from the kingdom that she lived in. But she wished that the rest of the people of the kingdom could know how splendid, how amazing Samba was as well. And one day, with nothing but love expressing through her words and gestures, she turned to Samba and said, "Oh, how I wish the rest of the people in the kingdom knew you as I did. I hate to say it, but I wish that the Moors who lived to the north would come on one of their invasions and try to steal something away so that you could head our army and vanquish them and return with all of the people praising you. Ah, that would be a beautiful day," she said. Well, as she was speaking, she noticed that Samba began to grow darker and darker in his expression. And when she had finished, he turned to her and said, "Don't ever speak words like that again. War and the thought of war and having to be in a war is why I left my kingdom. If I am sought after to lead an army into battle, it will be the last you ever see of me. Don't speak these words again." The princess, her eyes grew wide. "Samba," she said, don't speak words like this to anyone else, because if you do, they may think you are in earnest." Well, it was not very long after that the Moors indeed invaded. While there was a great celebration happening outside the walls of the kingdom, the Moors led off a great number of sheep and goats that had been grazing on a hillside. In the few hours that it took to realize what had happened, they had gone off quite a distance. The king just felt completely insulted by what had happened. This had not happened for so long. What were they thinking? He immediately began to beat the war drum, meaning that the warriors were to gather in the square. You can imagine the people of the kingdom began to call out Samba's name, for they wanted nothing more, like the princess, to see Samba, the son-in-law of the king, drive off the Moors and return the stolen sheep and goats. Where was he? I'll leave the story here, and tomorrow I will continue, and we'll find out where Samba was. Thanks for joining. Have a great rest of your day.